On a different subject, I'd like to ask you...
there are no different subjects.
All right, fair enough. I'd like to ask you about part of the English language, actually a specific word that in polite circles is known as the F word. And the reason I'm asking about it is not so much any kind of a definition, but as its ability to be used in so many different ways. No, people would say they are gloriously happy or hopelessly depressed. You wouldn't say you're gloriously depressed, but you could take that word and put it in front of either of those two descriptions and get your point across. What is it about that word that has so much power?
Well, it's interesting. We always enjoy how a series of questions from someone, especially a thinking person like you, a deliberate creator like you, how the questions all mesh together and lead to one to another, to another, to another. And this is the case here again, in that the awareness of other people's response is really at the basis of this whole conversation. And in fact, most words are that way. In other words, you speak because you want communication. But it's what we want to get back to is that subject that you were brought up a little bit ago about really not caring what someone else thinks, and would that be something to strive for? And we say you want to strive for the feeling of your inner being, while you're not striving so hard for what other people think. But almost everybody, it really cares a lot about what other people think. So when someone gets into a really bad jam, where they have really deprived themselves of their resonance and connection to source, so they're feeling at their very worst, often what they want from others is an understanding of where they are. And so often they will use a word that they believe will be the most upsetting or the most shocking in order to render them there. It's sort of like, my pain is so great, if I can get you to share some of it with me, then maybe my burden won't be so great. Of course, it never works that way. It just compounds it. But that is what is at the basis of, there are just a lot of people that want to upset a lot of people. And initially, that F word that you're talking about, that's the way that's the most popular version of it was created and is offered from that point of view.
But what if when it's offered to someone to describe they are so extremely happy they
what's happened to someone like that is that word has become completely diffused to them. In other words, they're not using it in that way. In the one way, when it is being used in a very negative way, it's a completely out of the vortex attempt to get someone else to really be out of the vortex with you. But someone who's just using it as a descriptive word, who's not out of the vortex, what you've heard us say on so many occasions, it does not matter what you say, it's how you feel when you say it.
Right.
And so when you think about it, there are people, Jerry is one of them, who was always so completely offended by that word that even though there were really funny, Chris Rock is one of them, very, very funny comedians that Esther so wanted to enjoy, Jerry wasn't going to have any of it because that word was so... But over time, he wears you down. And the word comes to not offend you anymore, and then you can enjoy the humor that he's offering all around it. And so it's where you are in relationship to your vortex first, and then the word next. Because the fact of it is, people could use any word out of the vortex or any word in the vortex.
Right.
There's an out of the vortex and in the vortex version of almost everything.
Right. Okay.